Hey, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us. Welcome back to another episode of YHBTV. That's Your Handmade Business Television. I hope that you all saw that and didn't miss out because it was awesome. And I feel totally like Tom Cruise right now. So yeah, this is Your Handmade Business Television, our weekly series dedicated to helping you navigate all things maker life. I'm Isaac Watson, co-director of Academy of Handmade, with this lovely lady over here, Sharon Fain. And we're getting a little weird in August with our 80s themed YHB TV series. Today is all about risky business and confession time. I've never actually seen the movie. I watched the trailer last week and I'm missing out. Yeah, anyway, so I'm not Tom Cruise. And I'm also going to button my shirt back up a little. A little
PG-13 up in here, guys.
So anyway, we are Academy of Handmade. We are a supportive community for makers. Of course, now I have a red mark from my sunglasses on my nose. In this series, we tackle a topic every week that we think gets a little deeper into what's really going on in your business. Thank you, Ginger. I'm also glad I'm not Tom Cruise. So anyway, let's actually get down to business. First of all, we want to make sure that you all know that this episode is brought to you by our Jumpstart Your Handmade Business program, which is a self-guided course designed to help you have a better sense for where you are and where you're going in your business, how to get there. We offer lots of resources and magical spreadsheets and all kinds of things that can really help you make some progress in your business. So if you're interested in that, please do check it out by clicking the green button below the video or going to academyofhandmade.com/jumpstart. Sharon, I have to know. Everybody's talking about Making It because it aired Tuesday night, right? And you and I haven't really had a chance to talk about this, and I have not had a chance to watch it yet because I was at dinner with some friends last night, and I had.
How have you still not watched it?
I know. Well, I was having issues Tuesday night with the NBC app, and it was just not cooperating. But I just have some thoughts without having seen it yet, but first I want to know what your thoughts are on it.
Well, my first thought is that I am excited for Robert Mahar, and spoiler alert, I am excited that he won the first challenge. I feel like there's a good chance he could go all the way. I would like to add that Robert Mahar, we crowned him a master maker in 2016 through the Academy of Handmade Awards before NBC did any of this stuff. So I just want to say, watch out for the cease and desist. No, I'm just kidding.
We knew Robert Mahar before he was cool, okay?
Yeah. Oh, he's always been cool. We just have known it before NBC did. So, yes. So I'm excited that we're seeing his talent on display. I am excited that people are seeing, people do craft and incorporate craft into their life. I think it's so good to see a breadth of people doing craft. And I think, I think somebody posted, I don't know if you're familiar with the humorist R. Eric Thomas. He's hilarious. Does a lot of commentary on current events and stuff like that. Anyways, he is a hilarious person, and he did a thing where he wrote how he was super in love with making it, and he thought that crafting was just for, old ladies, and I feel like we need to get away from that stereotype. And I think he brought up a point that 40% of crafters identify as men. So I think let's just destroy some of these crafting stereotypes. Just like I think Great British Bake Off did a lot for home bakers that were young men, and I feel like that's such a great thing to show men enjoying baking. Ginger says, "Well, I am an old lady." Yes, and we love our senior craft and I'm making people sound older now. Not like a senior citizen crafter, but like people that are like seasoned in this space. I feel like, I feel like that is such a great thing too. And like the intergenerational part of it is definitely needs to happen more. And I'm glad to see that they're able to show younger people picking it up, because I think it's an important stereotype to bust. I think it's always tricky with this stuff, because you want to show the skill in this and you want people to participate in the joy of crafting, but you don't want to denigrate the talents and skills that it takes to be in a handmade business and do this professionally too, right? So I think that's always something that's a risk. You're kind of a tension that happens when you're doing this kind of show. So I will say my criticisms of the show, I'm glad it is in the spirit of Great British Bake Off. I wish I knew more about the contestants. I don't feel like we got into their backgrounds as much, and I wanted to know about that more. I also wish we understood how they were making all of their stuff. I feel like Robert's second project, like his really cool pictures that he makes, anyways, they don't really discuss it at all. They don't really talk to him about it. And it would be nice to know how he made this, what his inspiration was. I feel like there was a lot of like Seth and Amy. Well, that's from Saturday Night Live. Amy and Nick being funny, which is nice at some level, but I really wish that we got to know more about the projects. So those are my critiques. If I could give feedback to NBC, but overall, definitely probably one of the better crafty shows that I've seen on television.
So as I said, but I have denigrating, seeing some comments in a Facebook group. Now, I would say that the majority of people I know have over the moon about the show. I'm part of a Facebook group of capital C crafts people back from my days at a contemporary craft museum. And I was really disappointed to see how mean they were about the show. Somebody just posted the New York Times review about the show in this Facebook group, and it just turned into this hate thread about DIY movement and how this does not qualify as craft and this. I was just like, people, this has nothing to do with contemporary craft. Like this hasn't pretended to be contemporary craft. What is, like, I don't know. It was really disheartening to read these comments, and I mean, this has long been a problem, right? Like ever since the DIY movement, the academic craft movement, the artists and crafts people have cried against the democratization and the uneducation of crafters and craftiness. And anyway, apparently it's still a thing, and it's really unfortunate, and I'm really bummed about that. But I am glad to hear this about Robert and to see everybody else's positive reactions.
I think you're always, no matter what sort of skill competition you do, you are always going to have people come in and be like, just like Project Runway, right? You're going to always have people that are going to be like, well, that's not how fashion is done, or that's not how any cooking or baking is done, or whatever. And I understand those points. I think when you look at fashion, when you look at cooking and baking, I feel like all of these shows, the ones that are done well, I feel like bring more to your industry than they take away. I think I always think there's a danger in people thinking that, you know, the time condensed of a 1 hour show, which they obviously spent at least a day doing these projects, probably too, you know, is always hard. I wish they would have shown more labor and how much goes into this stuff. It is television, so that I feel like a 1 hour show already went by pretty quick. It's obvious that some of these people are truly gifted at being craftsmen. The guy who's the woodworker on there is a talent. I realize that there's, you know, a backlash to like crafty bloggers or whatever. I'm not here to denigrate any of that, but like Robert is truly, I think, you know, one of a very rare, brilliant generalist in crafts. And I think, you know, the guy that did the paper, he was also awesome too. So I understand where people come from, but I also think that, you know, we're asking for perfect and letting it be the enemy of good sometimes. So
yeah. Anyway, we digress. We're not here entirely to talk about this new TV show, though Sharon and I were chatting about doing like a catty commentary or voiceover thing of, you know, like as they do on the internet these days. But
does anyone here watch the show Pose? Because that was my suggestion. Are you familiar with the character? Okay. Well, the character who does like announces the balls there, his name is Pray Tell, and he is fabulous. And I feel like if you could do Pray Tell, you know, judging these crafts the way he judges people at the ball. Oh man, this is Sharon's two worlds combining in a delicious. I mean, not that I'm in the ball culture, but you know what I mean. Like two loves of my life right there. That would be fantastic. So, anyways, I just thought that would be a fun take on that. If somebody ever wants to be talented enough to like get Pray Tell to have a voiceover on on a clip of making it, I promise you that will go viral. This is my gift to you.
Taking note of that for my future YouTube fame.
Rachel says in the comments, I greatly appreciated how kind they were to each other. There's enough nastiness out there. It's refreshing to see people working together and positivity. And I think that's such a great thing to position the show as much as you might want to you know, critique it for the lack of craftsmanship and artisanship that they might not express to the level that we would like. I think people being positive around hands-on projects is great, and we should celebrate that for what it is. And that's awesome. So
I think for me, the final thing that I would say is that it seems like this show is following the same lines and getting a lot of the same feedback that the reboot of Queer Eye did, in its positivity and its like community aspects and things like that. So I think if that's a trend in reality TV, then I think that's probably a good one.
Yep, totally, definitely, 100%.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about Risky Business and not the movie.
Yes.
Maker businesses are always involve risks. And as we were thinking about this month, we wanted to be able to address some of the, I guess, tips and tricks we have about addressing risk in your business or evaluating risk, and how to just kind of go about it on a regular basis, because it comes up all the time, and you can't really avoid risk without and expect to grow, I guess.
And even not doing anything and just staying where you're at, that's a risk too. So I feel like people think that like, oh, if I just repeat the same thing I did last year, that's me not taking a risk. That is you taking a risk. It's just a different risk in your mind and how you're doing it. So I think we want to encourage people to evaluate what really is a risk and understand that everything's a risk at some level and you're just treating it different. So I think one of the things that we discussed about is that first, I think if you're going to grow in business, like your goals should scare you a little bit. Like your bigger goals, like obviously we're definitely on team reality with goals, but it should definitely feel like you're pushing yourself, and that even if you if you shoot for the moon, you still land in the stars situation, like you're still pushing yourself forward at some level. So what you're kind of doing to get there should scare you. It shouldn't be like, obviously, like you're jumping out of an airplane scary or something. It should just scare you enough that like, okay, like I understand this is not a 100% safe bet, or that like this is out of my comfort zone. So if it's too attainable, it won't push you forward enough. It won't cause you to think differently. And I think when you have a bigger goal, it pushes you to problem solve in a different way and examine everything differently in your business. And I think if you play it too safe, it doesn't force you to look at your business that much differently. It says status quo is fine. And it really might not be. And there's always room for improvement. And I think that's, having things that make you sort of take risk or, feel risky, help you to understand how you can improve and shape things up.
Yeah, I think definitely I would add to that if your goals don't push you enough, if they don't scare you enough, they can breed complacency. And that's where you can tend to get that actually ends up being really, really risky, because you can get to a point where you're like, you look around and suddenly, oh, I don't have a business anymore, and I didn't realize it because I was complacent this whole time, or I can't react to market changes, or I can't address something that's happened in my business because I'm not prepared for it, because I haven't been thinking bigger picture. So I think that's absolutely critical, that your business goals need to scare you a little bit. They need to be ambitious. There's a reason in some of the programs we do, we talk about a big, hairy, audacious goal, because they need to get you out of your comfort zone. If they're gonna work, if they're gonna motivate you to work toward it. Another thing
I would also add to, if you guys have anything about a risk that you took, no matter what, or a risk you didn't take, and sort of a lesson from that, like put it in the ask a question area or in the chat. Like we'd love to know about your risks too. So
yeah, for sure. I think another thing is, so we talked already about risks being an everyday occurrence in your business. They're small, they're big, they have little repercussions, or they have giant repercussions in your business, but you're always taking risks. I think if one thing that can help, especially if you're not quite sure how to evaluate a big risk, is to look at how you evaluate little risks, the everyday stuff, the stuff that comes more naturally to you. Because if you can get a better understanding of how you address day-to-day things, or things that seem simple, that can actually help arm you to address the bigger risks when they arise. By, like little risks, we're often looking at very rationally, or we're not dealing with a lot of emotion. There's not a lot of fear around them. And so if you can adopt kind of a matter of fact mentality to them, and keep kind of a stick to the facts approach, then I think that can be helpful for evaluating bigger risks.
I also think it's really helpful to understand that you take risks all the time and don't even know it, just so that you understand your biases about risk. Like, what risks are you okay with? Like, you're probably taking a lot of risks that you're unaware of, like teeny tiny risks. And it helps you understand, like, okay, what am I biased towards? Like, why is this other risk making me uncomfortable when this risk doesn't seem as uncomfortable? And like, I've seen this with other people too, where I'm like, they're totally fine spending crazy amounts of money on this thing, but spending a little bit of money on this other thing is like bananas to them. And I feel like I see a lot, because I'm I'm in marketing and PR, that people are often very much like, I don't see the return on marketing and PR. So like, I just spend a teeny tiny amount of that, and, you know, that money goes elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
Amanda mentioned in the chat, I've taken a lot of big risks this year, which are all good. Raised my prices, discontinued tons of items that didn't fit with my brand, changed my logo and website, adding lots of new designs that I actually want to make. The risks I took the past few years were all the risk of not making changes. And it was really bad because I lost focus and wasn't happy. So incidentally, Amanda, this morning I was editing your podcast interview for the episode that's going to come out very soon. And I was thinking of this the entire time. And I'm glad you said something, because I kind of wanted to say it, but I didn't want to put you on the spot or spill the beans. But absolutely. So if this can be a little tease, the next episode coming out of the podcast will feature Amanda Siska, and she dives deep. It's a kind of a heart-wrenching story. But what she's learned out of it has been really interesting, and I think will be really beneficial to a lot of people.
Yeah, I would say like just following Amanda's journey a little bit from the sidelines and seeing how her business has transformed and seeing the things that she's decided to change about it. Like, it's so easy to talk about like, well, duh, just do X, Y, and Z. But like, those are scary changes to make. Those are not guaranteed changes to benefit you in the end. It seems like it probably should, but you know, I think bravo to Amanda for taking all of those risks and doing that. And I think her business is really in a very like interesting place right now. Like I think she's done so many smart things about it. So bravo to you, Amanda.
Yeah. I think one of the things that stuck out to me related to this, she said that she had, as she was kind of revisioning her business, she realized that she can't lean on what she's done in the past. And so in a lot of ways, it's like an entirely new business for her, where everything has to be thought about from a fresh perspective instead of just resting on laurels of what's worked in the past.
Yeah. This kind of goes along with the next thing of, I think that risks in your business can be more than just financial. They can affect your time, emotions, well-being, relationships, and any mix of those things. And I think a lot of times this is when Isaac and I kind of talked about a lot, but we're okay with the risks of just continuing to do things ourselves fully in business without risking to spend money on an accountant or, you know, another person in our business to help us, because that financial risk is so great. But like, we're totally willing to just risk, you know, sacrificing going to friends' birthdays or get-togethers or kids' plays or whatever else, you know, that you're sort of sacrificing. And so you are sacrificing and risking in other ways other than money. And I think money tends to be the one that most people, I would say, probably freeze up on when in terms of a risk to pay for something. But we're totally fine doing something and risking, you know, will this pay off by sacrificing my family's time and my sanity, you know, staying up super late to do something when you should have just hired somebody or whatever.
Yeah. And I think one thing that can happen is by avoiding risks like that, we overlook what kinds of mindset shifts or advances we can make either in our own skill set or in our business by taking those risks. And I think speaking of hiring help, I recently hired a virtual assistant to help me with both my conference production business and with the podcast. And it was an initial kind of risk that I took because I knew I was committing to a certain number of hours a month and I needed to make sure this was financially viable and things like that. But there was a shift in how I approached my work once I brought her on board that has really helped me think about my business differently and make decisions financially and strategically about my business that I probably wouldn't have made if it because before it was just affecting me. right? Like any risk I was taking was just about me. Now the risks I'm taking are not just about me, they're about her as well. They're about any future employees that I want to hire. They're about how I approach client work, all that kind of stuff. And so that seemingly little risk at the time really ended up turning into a major mindset shift for me. And so I think that's one thing, as you're evaluating risk, you want to make sure you're thinking of is what does this have the potential to help me do on the back end once I've actually taken it, if it works out.
Completely. Rachel said, my biggest risk was leaving my day job that had a secure salary and benefits, but I barely saw my family. I didn't want to miss out on that. And I think that's a really huge thing too, is I feel like I talked about this a lot in sort of like makery circles when the recession was sort of more like at its peak and there was, you know, high unemployment. And I feel like, you know, even today, I feel like it has really taught me to think about how this idea that somehow having this, you know, 9-to-5 job with a salary and all of that is somehow more secure than being in business for yourself. I don't think that's as true anymore. You know, there are certain jobs where it's probably more true, but I feel like, you know, so many jobs, there are layoffs, there are cutbacks, salary stagnation, of course, obviously going into business yourself and like having sort of to like front the money for that and figure out how the cash flow in that works is obviously, I think the bigger risk there. And like you're building a momentum in that. But I think being in business for yourself and doing things like that, the risk isn't quite as there. It might just not be as lucrative in some sense, you know. I don't want to decide how Rachel's business is going, but she might have taken somewhat of a pay cut in terms of benefits combined with salary and all of that. But when you sort of readjust and figure out like, this is how much I'm spending more with my family, I don't have to hire, you know, someone to watch my kids the same way. And I'm not running all over town. Like, yes, I might be making a little bit more money, but my quality of life like outweighs that benefit. And I think she said, yes, I did get a big pay cut. Yeah. So yes, she's still able to have a business where she has income and is able to sustain that business, even if it's not the same. So I think, again, like it's less about a risk in that situation and more about like, what am I comfortable paring down in my life and trading for intangibles that money is just not going to allow me in that situation. And I think we talked about this in an old YHBTV with Zelma Rose. Actually, what's her name again?
Lisa
Anderson Schaefer, sorry. About how, you know, her background is in psychology, and after she had her kid, she was looking to go back into her practice, and they had moved, I think, to out of San Francisco, and they were, you know, that's where her practice was. And I think that's even where her husband's business was, and doing adding everything up. And she realized like, okay, actually, when I think of paying for childcare, opening my practice back up in San Francisco and all of the hours I would spend doing on that, like, I'm really not making that much money, you know, and I could actually just replace that probably fairly easily working at home. So, you know, again, like the risk of working for yourself is not just necessarily, I think, money, it's other risks too. So,
yeah. Another thing that I think is really important is, and I feel like we say this, I mean, not just us, but a lot of people say this all the time, but this particularly applies to risk evaluation, is that when you look at peer achievements, do not let the reward obscure the risk that they took to get there. It is so easy to look at that social media, that shiny, perfect, flat laid, whatever image that they're projecting, and to not see everything it took to get there, or the risks that they took, or the work that they put in to make it happen. And I think that can get a lot of people, you know, feeling like they're missing out or feeling like their life is not as charmed as this other person. And I think you just need to make sure that you are being real with seeing what's presented to you and looking deeper at what it actually took to get there.
I think one person a business that I think that is a really good example of this is that Emily McDowell. If you really look at it, like her business has amazingly taken off in just a few years, like amazing. And she sort of created it out of like a necessity, wasn't really planning on it type situation. It just sort of happened. And she's been incredibly smart with her business and how she's run it. But she's taken a lot of risks in that business. And we just obviously starting, I think she cashed out her 401k or something to begin it or whatever, or some sort of kind of savings. Anyways, so that obviously is a big risk. But I think when she did it, I think during the recession too, and I feel like that obviously makes it feel like less of a risk because you were like, well, what else do I have going on? Might as well do this cool thing while we're at it. But I think like she's done a lot of things that haven't paid off, that have kind of been duds, that have flubbed. And, she just moves on, like, okay, on to the next thing. Like, this didn't work. Yes, I took this risk. Yes, I lost some money. But I'm just going to keep growing and have this get me smarter in my business and not, worry about the failure that came out of that. So I think it'd be very easy to look at her business and be like, oh, she's done everything perfectly. She's been really smart and done a lot of stuff incredibly smart, but she's also just made mistakes and took risks, didn't work. So,
Yeah. And on that note, on the flip side, you've got to know when to quit. We don't want you taking risks for risk's sake. If you've got that gambler mentality, where that makes you feel alive, like living on the edge and maybe at risk of losing it all, then you may want to like step back from that a little bit and be a little bit more metered in how you're evaluating your risk and making sure that you're not doubling down on it if all signs are pointing to it not paying off.
Yeah. I was definitely a part of a project that started out okay. A lot of people were in it. It seemed to be working great for them at the beginning, had some issues, but it sort of, after it opened, rapidly declined. And it was pretty clear that it wasn't really getting better. And I feel like a lot of people just threw good money after bad. And I think, it's like sometimes how we are in relationships, where we're just in this relationship and we're like, we already invested all this time in it. Surely it's going to get better. But that doesn't always happen a lot. And I think especially in business, you got to get a little less emotional about that stuff and know when to be like, all right, this was cool in the beginning. It's not getting better. I need to cut ties and not be sad about it and not be emotional about the money that I lost on this. Just if that means going to a new vendor, stopping a program that some people might be disappointed about, but ultimately isn't doing well for you, or product, whatever it is, like sometimes just you got to cut your losses.
It's true.
Know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Am I right, Isaac?
Right. That's right. So speaking of knowing when to fold them, the other thing we want to make sure you're careful of is that you're not blinding yourself to other people's advice or their experiences or to math. Like, the numbers don't work. The numbers don't work. You can't just plug your ears and turn away and pretend that they'll be fine. Same thing goes with people's advice and experiences, that they, there are, so one thing that we like try to get across a lot in this is we just want you to know that you're not alone out there, that there are plenty of other makers out there that have gone through similar experiences, that have learned the same lessons you're learning. Some have done it before you, some are going to learn them soon. And so if we can at least share that around and help each other out, I think and this speaks to why I think making it has been so generally positively received, is that it really is about the community helping each other. And so to that we say, talk about it with others. Don't keep it all in your head. Don't internalize all of your decision making, your risk evaluation, and use your resources. Talk to your partner or your spouse or your best friend or your parents or whoever is close to you about these things. Talk to peers. That's, find mentors, find just there is help out there. And you shouldn't have to be doing this all by yourself, essentially.
I think of one particular craft show that's run in this area, and it's never good, really. It is almost never good. And multiple people will tell other people it is not a good show. It's never great. I've never heard a single person really ever come away from one of their shows being like, this is great. And yet people still keep doing it. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. All the warning signs are there. Like, I think both Isaac and I are pro take a risk on a show of, if you're not 100% sure of it, but it seems like, you've talked with other people and like there are other rewards that are there that might possibly not be like, okay, didn't have my best booth day ever, but it was in my local community. So I got to meet a lot of people and they got exposed to my brand or whatever it is. But I think, there's just some things that are not great products or shows or what have you. And if it's like more than just a couple people telling you it's bad, maybe consider that you might not want to dump your money into that. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, beware the sales pitch. There are a lot of good sales pitches out there, a lot of charming people. What is that? Caveat emptor, right? Buyer beware.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, oh, this show is only $45. I don't know exactly the show, but I'm imagining it's a low price. And it's like, it's only $45 and, but it's $45 plus all the day that you're wasting being there, plus, whatever. So it's just kind of like, yeah.
Do you have feelings about this?
I have feelings about this show, so.
All right. Well, I think that covers everything we wanted to cover. Ultimately, I think that, like we said before, you're always going to be taking risks in your business. We want to make sure that you are doing so in a way that you're prepared for the consequences, that you're evaluating them appropriately, that you're doing things and setting goals that scare you a little bit, but that push you toward the right direction, and that that ultimately, if you're going to progress, if you're going to turn your maker business into something that sustains you, or whatever your goals are for your business, financially, strategically, personally, if you're going to try and achieve those goals, you're going to need to take risks to get there. So hopefully this helps you understand a little bit more about what it's like to take a risk and some of the things that you should and shouldn't do, and some of the help that's out there, because we're here to help. The community's here to help, and we want you to succeed.
Amen. All right. So next week, we are continuing our theme of 80s movies. And I'm trying to figure out which next week is, and it's not showing me. Oh, there it is. Labyrinth. Navigating customer service. So
I just want to know if one of us is going to dress up like the
that will be a little bit more of a in-depth costume there, I feel like.
I don't have my good David Bowie wig anymore. I have to be
but yes, so we'll talk about the labyrinth of customer service next week, and I hope you guys will join us. In the meantime, definitely check out Jumpstart Your Handmade Business if you feel like you are having the summer business doldrums at all. This is a great time to look at your business from a new perspective. Also, definitely check out our Facebook group on facebook.com/yourhandmadebusiness. So we will see you all next week.
Bye.